So, of course, with the impending news that Julen Lopetegui will be coming into West Ham, we've already had one side of the view when it comes to Lopetegui coming to West Ham. But we thought we'd also look at speaking to other people who know him really well, people that got to know him, but only for a short time. So we'll bring in Dave as a party from Talking Wolves, a good friend of the channel. Hope you're well, Dave. You keeping all right?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, no worries at all, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. So, listen, we had an interview. You mentioned that you've watched a bit of it on our channel the other day with Guillaume Balag, who was very one sided, I suppose you could say, in reference to Julen Lopetegui coming to West Ham. But of course, you're a Wolves fan, and most West Ham fans wouldn't have known him really. Well, we did. We got to know him a little bit for his attributes to what he brought to Sevilla, but he came to the Premier League and came to Wolves. So, I just want to kind of hear your side of the story, Dave, and see what your kind of thoughts are on Julen Lopetegui. So, just for kind of briefly, when he first came, were you excited? What did he say, and what transpired through his time with you guys?
So yeah, we were very excited. I think that was like the number one target really for Wolves to bring Lopetegui in. Really, we've got an interesting history of Lopetegui because when we were first taken over 2016 now, Lopetegui was the man that they wanted to take over and be sort of the spearhead to start the Fosun project at Wolves. And the takeover took too long, and ultimately he ended up taking the Spain job. But to be fair, to choose between Wolves or the Spanish national team job, I don't think it's a difficult decision to make. But so he took that, and obviously our history as a as a club, we went one way, he went another way, ended up being at Spain. Real Madrid did well at Sevilla. And then it was always going to happen, like that our paths were going to cross again. And when he was first linked, we were really excited, but his dad had just fallen ill. He'd ended up losing his job at Sevilla, and he ultimately turned down the Wolves job. And sort of we missed out on other targets, and sort of must have really been begging Julen Lopetegui to take this job. And in the end, we managed to change his mind and he joined. So we were really excited. This was right before the World Cup break. Which was important, I think, for Wolves, because if we had to wait till after the World Cup, which is what the original plan was, you lose a lot of preparation time. But he came in, and you could tell straight away he was a guy that knew what he was doing. On the face of it, seemed like a really good man and manager. I've seen some West Ham fans over the last couple of days post some of the clips and videos of when he wasn't managing the club. He came to the game, the final game before the World Cup against Arsenal, and the atmosphere that day was fantastic. A lot of support for Lopetegui, but his man and manager, the way he was speaking to players, the sort of mannerisms that he had around players as well, just seemed like, as a man manager, like I said, someone that seemed really, really switched on. So yeah, in terms of the sort of prior to the appointment, we were really, really excited, and things started off quite well for us and Lopetegui as well.
Yeah. So obviously you bring him in, you're quite excited by it. And I think initially, am I correct in saying when he comes in, I think are you sitting bottom of the table
Yeah,
when he
rock
comes
bottom.
in?
Yeah, rock
Yeah,
bottom. Yeah,
and by the end of the season, am I correct in saying you get to 13th, I believe?
yeah.
So he's obviously turned that season around. So what goes wrong? Where does it go wrong? In this kind of journey, as a coach or manager with you guys?
So I think arguably the issue was there ended up being friction between Lopetegui and the board. Now, the board at Wolves haven't had a fantastic reputation, especially with the fans over the last couple of years. I think basically what happened with Wolves and Fosun was that they almost set themselves a standard and a precedent when obviously you saw us win the championship the first year or the first couple of years back in the Premier League. They were putting their hand in their pocket and spending a lot of money on the team. Since COVID, that's dried up and slowed down massively. And I think they've convinced Lopetegui to join, spent a lot of money on him in January, which ultimately put us in a bit of financial trouble with FFP and so on. And basically, the board have acknowledged that, probably heard whispers of potential point deductions, which we have seen this year, and pretty much made it public that we can't spend this summer just gone, unless we sell some big players. And I don't think Lopetegui liked it. He was very vocal about it towards the end of last season. Pretty much said the squad that I've got now is not good enough if we want to compete next year, which I think a few players were upset by as well. And basically, we went into the pre-season not knowing if Lopetegui was going to be our manager or not. And the club didn't know what he wanted to do because he was just so vague about things. Ultimately, I think as the players were returning for pre-season, he sort of committed his future, or so we thought, committed his future. And then from the Lopetegui and Julen Balagay side of things, what he thinks is that Wolves kept changing the goalposts. And I have no doubt they did. But what I've been told, and this is concrete fact, is that Wolves basically said to him, we'll sign players, but it will be late in the window. I think Wolves knew that there were a couple of players that were going to go. And Lopetegui ultimately didn't want to wait. So we had this full pre-season with him. And less than 2 weeks before the season started, he told the club, look, I don't want to be here anymore. I'll give you a chance to sort someone out. I'll carry on training. But, I don't want to be here at the start of the season. So he left us a little bit in a difficult position. I can see it from both sides, but I think the fans are starting to side a little bit more with the club because they're really disappointed about how Lopetegui left us ultimately.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you can't. I mean, it's tough as any fan to look at his history as a manager or coach and go against what he's produced in terms of results, etc. And I think I can imagine, being in your shoes if you've got someone going into the preparation. The preparation is key going into a preseason. Something that as much as West Ham do prepare, we've been so used to lack of transfer activity early doors, and I find that that's always detrimented us as a team in terms of pushing on again for the next stage that you want to progress. We always leave our business really late, and the impression I'm getting from someone like Julen Lopetegui is that he wants to do his business early and he wants to get these players in early. And if the impression I'm getting again from building up so many different opinions is he can't handle when something changes in terms of the board, and that's where I'm not saying he spits his dummy out. He could necessarily spit his dummy out, and that's possibly what he's done. But it's definitely interesting because, of course, we've had one side of the story that's very pro Julen, and I think you're given a really good balance because you love the club that you support. You go and see them week in and week out, and you talk about them week in and week out every day. And it's important that you build something around the success that Wolves had. Did that set you back when he left?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because, look, I think he had a really productive preseason. I think in terms of tactics and what we were producing in preseason, you could tell the quality of the football was good. And ultimately, I was excited. And, look, I fully believe if Wolves didn't back Gary O'Neill to a certain extent as well throughout the season. But if in a different world, we had 60, 70, 80 million to spend on Lopetegui last summer without having to sell any players, I have no doubt we would have had a successful season. But I think going back to your point there, I think he is a head coach or he is a manager that doesn't like when things don't go his way. I think the shadiest thing, and I don't know if Julen had told you this or you've seen this elsewhere, the shadiest thing that I think Lopetegui did was we were on a pre-season tour, I think in Portugal, and sort of in the middle of the week, I had a message off someone saying there's quite big news coming out about Lopetegui about 4:30 and the club don't like it. And I was thinking, what's he done here? And basically, in the middle of this pre-season camp, he'd invited Julen Balaguer to go to his hotel room and do an awfully produced interview, basically not slagging the club off, but basically saying, I'm not getting my own way. And if I don't carry on getting my own way, the club didn't know about it. The only two people ultimately that knew about it was Balaguer and Lopetegui. And, and it was, I'd assume it's still on YouTube to watch now, but it wasn't good reading. And I think Lopetegui probably meant it with the right intentions and in the fact that he wants to stay at Wolves and he cared so much about the squad that he wanted to strengthen it. But from the outside, it wasn't a good look whatsoever. Like, there's ways to do it, really.
It does sound like he wears his heart on his sleeve. And sometimes when you wear your heart on your sleeve, you do sometimes the right thing is also equally the wrong thing. And you think you're doing the right thing, but it can be long-term the wrong thing, I suppose.
Even his disciplinary record from the dugout for Wolves, the amount of bookings that he got, he really didn't like. Which, for the first... So we went from Bruno Lage, who seemed to be a good coach, but had no connection with the fans or whatever. And then you've gone to this guy who all of a sudden, it's like he was a Wolves fan through and through. He cares. He's showing but then after about 5 or 6 games and he's still doing the same thing and just being stupid on the touchline, you think, right, he's taking the mick a little bit now. But look, I have no doubt that I think if he's backed and with a full preseason, because ultimately, Gary O'Neill didn't have a full preseason with us and Lopetegui didn't have a full preseason with us either. I think with a full preseason, you will see success from Lopetegui. Like you said earlier, you look at his history and his record against, in European competitions as well with Sevilla, for argument's sake. He's a good head coach, but he felt he had unfinished business in the Premier League, and I think he'll want to prove Wolves wrong, but prove a lot of other people wrong as well. So I do think he'll do a good job. If you guys can keep some of your top assets, I think he'll be a good head coach for you.
So just before you go, Dave, in terms of playing style, it talks a lot about 4-3-3 possession based, but You know, I don't believe anyone's ever really said that he plays a flamboyant style of football. But West Ham are currently used to being not possession based and
Yeah.
a low block. So, from your time as a fan watching Wolves under Lopetegui, what kind of style of football did he bring, and did it change based upon the players that he had available to him?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely like an improvement of what we saw under Bruno Lage. You know, for a short while, Lopetegui tightened us up a lot defensively, and sort of going forward, we were looking better, and attacking more in terms of the attacking sequences and patterns of play. It was a lot more attractive to watch. It wasn't. I'm not going to say it's the best football. You know, it was much better football than what we were seeing under Bruno Lage, but our home form was great. Lopetegui made Molineux a fortress, really, and that continued for a little bit under Gary O'Neill as well. The biggest issue we had with Lopetegui was lack of consistency, and towards the end of the season, he could. It might have been the fact that he got us safe and the players were almost sort of on the beach as such. But we had two of our biggest Premier League defeats, since we came back up under Lopetegui. We lost 5-0 twice. Once it was either 5 or maybe even 6-0 against Brighton, and then we lost 5-0 away at Arsenal as well. So that was a little bit concerning to end off the season. But I'm not going to sit here and say, look, you're going to be playing tiki-taka, full press, attacking football. But I would assume he's going to be a little bit more positive than what you have been seeing recently under David Moyes anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on.
Thank
I
you
know
very
you
much,
need to
mate.
head and go and do something else. So thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure,
And
mate.
if
Thank
anyone
you.
hasn't already, go and make sure you go and check out Talking Wolves. We'll obviously be doing a little bit of work together this season. So take it easy and thank you
Thank
very
you, buddy.
much.
Cheers, mate.